All right, everyone, it is 1 o'clock Eastern time, so we will go ahead and get started. Once again, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for attending today's webinar, where we'll be covering 5 steps to empower survivors to succeed financially. And our presenter today will be Kim Scouller with WealthWave. Just a couple of housekeeping items to go over before we get started with the presentation. We'll start off with some information today. So everyone, all attendees are in listen-only mode, and you'll be muted throughout the presentation. If you have a question for the presenter, please see the Q&A section of the toolbar on Zoom. Please enter your question in there, and we'll be monitoring that and ask the questions as they come, or excuse me, we'll save all questions for the end of the presentation. Chat can be used to communicate with other attendees and panelists, as well as please use that if you find any issues with the webinar, and we'll do our best to get those fixed as quickly as possible. I'll go ahead and actually we'll turn some videos on here too. So everyone, I can wave to everyone and say hi. So certificates, recording, and any additional resources will be emailed to everyone who attends within the next week. If you are a call-in listener, I won't have an email address for you. So if you could please send me an email to ashley@domesticshelters.org, and I'll make sure that you're on our list of attendees and get all that information. All right, I just want to cover a couple things. I know, most of you probably heard of this webinar from our email list or maybe our Facebook page, and are kind of familiar with domesticshelters.org, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands who we are and what we do. We are the fastest growing online resource for domestic violence information and resources, and we help over 2 million people each year find the answers that they need about domestic violence. And some of that help that we provide is through our searchable database of over 2,800 domestic violence programs in the US and Canada. If you are a domestic violence service organization or provider and you're not sure if you're in our database, feel free to contact me. My email is down there, just ashley@domesticshelters.org. And also, if you're located in the United States, you do have the opportunity to set up a free wish list on domesticshelters.org, which allows donors from anywhere in the world to send donations directly to you, the exact items that you need. They just, with a couple of clicks, can go on and make donations to your organization. Also, another reminder, don't forget, we have an advocate Facebook community. If you're interested in joining that, just go onto our Facebook page and look for our groups. You can also send me an email and I can send you a link as well. So we love to have that space for advocates to kind of ask questions, share success stories. It's just a great place for you all to connect and just continue to learn. And finally, one last announcement. We do have the Purple Ribbon Awards, which is a brand new program that we're excited. We kind of announced this year, but it will officially open up for nominations on January 1st. We've combined forces with a lot of national experts, and we're launching this new major awards program. The program will honor the heroes and allies of the domestic violence movement. And most excitingly, we have $30,000 in grants that will be awarded to those that we feel exemplify the top winners. So again, nominations will start January 1st. So go to purpleribbon.awards.org or domesticshelters.org/awards to learn more and sign up to be notified once the period opens. So with that, I'll go ahead and introduce our speaker for today. Kim Scouller has been an attorney for over 30 years, having served as an adjunct professor at the Brandeis School of Law at the University of Louisville, and as an in-house attorney for one of the largest financial service companies in the world. Currently, Kim manages her own law firm, Jade Law Offices, and continues her work helping to educate others on preparing for their financial future as a senior marketing director at WealthWave and a registered representative and investment advisor represented at Transamerica Financial Advisors. Kim founded and launched Only Blue Skies in 2014, which is a women's business platform focusing on making financial education and the financial profession more accessible for women. And Kim reached out to us recently because she has just kind of taken a really big interest in how she can use her skills and her knowledge to help women who are suffering from domestic violence. And we're so grateful to have Kim here today. She has a wealth of knowledge. And so with that, I'll stop talking and let Kim just kind of take things away and start the presentation. So welcome, Kim. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Ashley, and domesticshelters.org for inviting me to come and speak on a topic that I feel so passionately about. And I want to thank all of you for joining this event. It is amazing the work that you all do. And I just so appreciate it. And anything that I can do to help, be a resource, brainstorm, I am here for you, as Ashley and her great organization are. So I'm going to share my screen.
You should have controls there.
Thank you.
All right.
Let's close that. I'm getting a little bit better at all of this. I'm usually the last person in the room to do anything with technology. But in these times, we're all getting better at things and improving our skills. So as Ashley mentioned, I come from the legal and financial industries. I served as in-house counsel for one of the largest financial services companies in the world, and actually served as president of one of their largest affiliates here in the United States. And in that role, I found myself in my personal life a victim and now survivor of domestic violence. But a big part of that was the financial abuse. So when I talk to women, it doesn't matter your background, your education, your career opportunities, none of that matters. All of us can find ourselves subject to this. So as you all know, in fact, 1 in 4 women will experience domestic violence in her life. 99% of domestic violence victims are also victims of financial abuse. Now, financial abuse, we find, comes in 3 different categories. Financial control, which is the first one. As you all know, I'm sorry, I got a little off track. Victims stay or go back to abusive situations. One of the big reasons for that are financial obstacles and financial dependence. So one of the things that we're trying to do is to provide financial education in order to help women either prevent the situation or get out of the situation or recover from the situation. So the first category of financial abuse that we find is financial control. And in these situations, partners will deny or limit access to money or access to financial information, maybe hide money from their victim, demand a detailed accounting of how they spend money, maybe criticize their financial decisions, threaten to withhold money, or maybe make big financial decisions without consulting their partner at all. Another category is employment or education sabotage. This, as you all are familiar, is when an abuser pressures their partner to miss or be late for, or maybe even quit their job or academic pursuits. Or maybe they harass them at work or school, or they harass their coworkers or their bosses or their school colleagues. They may belittle work or school accomplishments, criticize career academic choices and goals, and it may even get to the point where they physically harm you to prevent you from going to work or school. The third category we see of financial abuse is economic exploitation. And this happens when the abuser withdraws money from the bank accounts without the partner's knowledge, maybe adds their name to credit cards, pays the bills late, or maybe doesn't pay the bills at all, may run up a whole lot of debt. in their partner's name, even maybe taking out a first or second mortgage on the family home. And oftentimes we see abusers ruining the credit score of their partner, even so that even when the partner leaves the situation, they have years of trying to get out of debt and improve their credit score situation. Almost every aspect of leaving an abusive situation involves money, from putting gas in the car to finding a new place to live to putting food on the table. So we feel fundamentally women need to know how money works. So that is the first step. Women are empowered. People are empowered with knowledge, but women in particular need to know how money works. Now, this information is not taught in schools. So we've got to actually seek it out. Maybe it's, looking things up online or getting books or talking to colleagues who may know more about money, or even talking with a financial professional. So many financial professionals will do consultations on a complimentary basis at the beginning. And so there are a lot of resources out there to improve your knowledge about how money works. Second is be involved with your finances. Even in healthy relationships, both partners should know and be well informed on what's happening with that couple's financial situation. One of the things that I counsel or advise financial professionals to do, especially if they're working with married couples, is to make sure they're talking to both partners. Oftentimes, we'll find a wife who will just defer all of the decisions to her husband. At all ages, I see the same kind of behavior. And I'll talk to both couples, healthy relationships or troubled relationships, that both parties need to be there. They need to ask their questions. They need to be informed. Both of their goals and interests need to be served by setting up their financial plan. And so that is something that I highly recommend for not only financial professionals, but for partners and couples. Next, women need to be on the lookout for red flags. And you all know a whole wealth of resources that help identify these for women. And I just went through some of the red flags for financial abuse. When I talk to women and I go through the different categories of financial abuse, I oftentimes see women who have like a light go off in their heads, like they never thought that they were the subject of financial abuse. And I think the more information we can get out there to help women see it when they're in it or see it when it's coming, helping women, as Ashley's told me about domesticshelters.org, they help women connect the dots. And so that's one of the things I want to help do with getting information about red flags out there and getting information out there about how money works. Fourth is talk about the problem. As women, and I know men are also the subject of domestic violence and financial abuse, but from my experience as a woman, we will talk about a lot of things. We'll talk about embarrassing things, but things that we don't talk about usually because we feel ashamed or extreme embarrassment, or if we find ourselves in a domestic violence situation or a financial abuse situation or both. We also don't talk about our finances. When we start talking about things, when women start supporting each other, we move mountains. It is amazing the power that we have just with our voice collectively. So I highly recommend that women talk about their issues, talk about those things that we're taught to keep private and confidential, because change, it will be much harder to help create change in the darkness and in the silence. And if we're able to bring these issues to light and help women see that they shouldn't be ashamed or embarrassed, that a lot of women go through this, and that there are a lot of resources and a lot of support out there, I think we can have a positive influence on bad situations. And then fifth, women should put a personal financial safety plan in place. When we talk to women about leaving situations, they have to do it safely. And you all are in the best position to know what women need to do in order to help ensure their safety. One of the things that I want to go into more detail about is putting a personal financial plan in place. Whether a woman is in an abusive situation or she's recovering from and surviving from an abusive situation, knowing how money works and knowing how to put her own financial plan together, I think is an important step to get her feet on the ground financially and to start building from there the kind of life that she wants to have. So I've gone through the 5 steps to empower survivors financially. Now let's talk about the 7 money milestones that are the part of a strong financial plan. So the 7 money milestones of a financial plan, the first step is financial education. And that's, part of what we're going through now and what we encourage women to do in learning how money works and looking for those resources out there. Number 2 is proper protection, making sure that you've got protection against loss of income, loss of savings. And I'm going to go into a whole lot more detail about each one of these milestones. The third one is making sure you've got an emergency fund in place. The fourth is debt management. The fifth is cash flow. Multiple streams of income are the watchwords I tell women. And then building wealth towards your financial goals, and then protecting wealth by putting a legacy plan in place. So let's go through the 7 money milestones. The first one, as I said, is financial education, becoming financially literate and finding a financial professional who will work with you. And again, a lot of financial professionals will work on a complementary basis at first, or they're compensated from the products and services they may use to help you put a financial plan in place. Those are essential when you're ready to put a full financial plan in place. So let's talk about proper protection, protecting against loss of income and protecting against loss of savings. This involves insurance, and the rule of thumb is you should have 10 times your annual family income in life insurance. So if you earn $50,000 a year, you should consider $500,000 of coverage. If you earn $100,000 a year, you should have $1 million worth of coverage. But that's just a rule of thumb. You're going to need to look at factors that are part of your situation. How old are you? How much debt do you have? What's your current income and your current financial situation? What's your health? How many people are depending on you who would suffer if you couldn't work anymore for whatever reason? And then if you're part of a business, what role do you play in that business such that there might need to be life insurance to cover the loss of your ability to participate? Unfortunately, most people totally underestimate how much life insurance they need, and they overestimate how expensive life insurance is. For women who are starting out or starting over, and they've got children, and those children are completely dependent on that single mom, I can work with them. A lot of financial professionals can, or you can find online very inexpensive life insurance if you are relatively healthy so that your children will have protection in the event something happens to you. Now, there are basically two kinds of life insurance, temporary and permanent. Temporary is the least expensive. So especially for women who are starting over or starting out, and they've got small children, this is what I'm going to recommend for them because they can get a lot of life insurance very inexpensively. The problem with term life insurance is it's temporary. So it only lasts a particular period of time, like 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. With term insurance, for a low premium, you can get help protecting your family. If you have a mortgage, insurance will cover whatever the debt is. If you're planning for your children's education, future education, if something happens to you, that money can be set aside for their college tuition. And if you're part of a very thriving business, then you and your partners are going to want to make sure you've got insurance in place, as I said previously, so that in the event something happens to you or one of your partners, there's a source to take care of what you need to get to replace it. Now, when that term ends, scenario one is you no longer need life insurance, and scenario two is you may still need term life insurance. We call this the financial X wave because it looks like an X, and it talks about decreasing responsibility and increasing wealth. When you're younger, especially if you've got a family, you have more responsibility but less wealth. And that's the period of time that term insurance is very good because, again, it's very inexpensive. As you get older, the hope is that you're growing your wealth and also that your children or your family are becoming independent. And so you have less responsibility towards them. In that instance, especially as you get older, permanent life insurance might be a really good option. Permanent insurance isn't like term, it's permanent. So it lasts your entire lifetime and it doesn't expire at the end of a term. It also has other benefits. Like term life insurance, with permanent life insurance, the insurance proceeds are tax-free. So whether you've got term insurance or permanent insurance, if you die, your heirs, your beneficiaries get those death benefit proceeds tax-free. In addition to the death benefit, permanent insurance will also provide a long-term care rider. It's typically an option. And permanent insurance also has the ability to grow cash value inside the policy that has several tax advantages. The cash value you can access tax-free to maybe purchase a car, go on a vacation, fund a wedding, and certainly to supplement retirement money. Now, permanent life insurance is a long-term strategy. So for a woman who's just starting out or starting over, this is not something that I recommend for her. It's term insurance. But I'm going to be helping her get to the point where permanent insurance becomes an option for her. Especially permanent life insurance that has a long-term care insurance rider. 70% of people over age 65 are going to need some type of long-term care insurance. Long-term care is not covered by health insurance. It's not covered by Medicare. It's not covered by disability insurance. It's a totally separate kind of policy that covers expenses related to assisted living, related to a rehab center, maybe if Alzheimer's runs in your family, related to cognitive care or memory care. You can see from this chart that a long-term care need, if it lasts more than a year, is typically almost 4 years. And you can see what the annual median costs are. For an assisted living center private room, it's $50,000. For a home health aide to come in, it's $50,000. And then you can see the costs for a nursing home or a private room in a nursing home. It's very expensive. Now, I am joining this webinar from the Atlanta, Georgia area, and I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky, and my mom's in her 80s, and I was looking at relocating her to Atlanta to be in a nice assisted living center near me, and it was outrageously expensive. It was $4,000 to $6,000 a month that just in the Atlanta area. So you might want to look at what the costs are in your area to see if this is something you need to consider, and a future goal for those DV survivors that you work with. Now, long-term care insurance is available in a standalone policy or as a rider to permanent insurance, as I just talked about. There are other riders that you can attach to a permanent policy and some term insurance policies, like critical illness or chronic illness. So you can access that death benefit early if you find yourself in one of these situations: heart attack, stroke, cancer, Lou Gehrig's disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's. Now, the third money milestone is the emergency fund, and that's saving 3 to 6 months of income or expenses, and this is to prepare for unexpected expenses. So using that rule of thumb, 3 to 6 months, if your annual income is $50,000, then you need to set aside $12,500 up to $25,000 for your emergency fund. Now, it's not expected that you would do that all in one lump sum. I frequently advise women, single moms in particular, to set aside a little bit every day or every week or every month. It doesn't matter how much it is, as long as you're setting aside something. Most women live paycheck to paycheck, especially single moms. We're living paycheck to paycheck. I'm a single mom now. Of course, my son now is 24, but at the time, it was really, really hard. So it was hard to find money to set aside. But if you set aside a little bit every day, every week, every month, and you continue that habit, you will set up your emergency fund. Now, what does that do for you? When you have an emergency fund in place, then you are technically no longer living paycheck to paycheck. Because if an emergency comes up, you've got a source of funds that you can tap to pay for that. For example, if your refrigerator goes on the fritz, or you need to put new tires on your car, or your child has a dental emergency, or say you find yourself in a pandemic. Now, women have been disproportionately affected by the coronavirus in a couple of ways. One, we represent most of the employees in industries that have been hard hit by coronavirus: retail, hospitality, and restaurant business. In addition to that, women who have held on to their job have had to take time off of work to take care of their children because the schools were closed. And that time off certainly has hurt our paycheck, it's hurt our bottom line, but it's also put us behind in terms of promotions and raises in the future. So having an emergency fund for me, for single moms, it's the number one thing I help them to deal with. Whether it's putting money aside in a bank account, a physical bank, or an online bank, that's the number one thing women need to start with. Now, the fourth step is debt management, and that's about changing your habits and striving to eliminate debt. Here are 5 tips to eliminate and stay out of debt. First of all, know what you owe. I and a lot of other women may not open the statements or not go online to look at it. We just don't want to know. We think, if we don't know it, it can't hurt us. But knowledge is power, and we need to take control of the debt situation, especially if our partner engaged in financial exploitation, ran up debts under our name, and left us with bad credit. We need to get a handle on this. And the first step is know what you owe. Get those bills out. Write down how much it is, what the interest rate is, what the balance is, and how long you have to pay it off. The second tip is no more late payments. Late payments are the fastest way to ruin your credit score. What I like to do is set up auto pay or put reminders, those alarms on my cell phone. So I know when something is due if it's not on an auto pay schedule. Next is target one debt at a time. I like to target the debt with the smallest balance. Some people say to target the debt with the highest interest rate, but what I found is the debt with the highest interest rate is usually the debt with the biggest balance. And so you're not going to see the fruits of your labor as quickly as if you start with the smallest debt. Start with the smallest debt, get that paid off, pay extra, whatever you need to do to get that paid off, and then move to the next smallest debt. Use the money you were using to pay off the smallest one and add to that any extra you can. And then stop charging. Use your debit card, don't spend more than what you've got. Unless you're a single mom and there are things you need to do for your child. And I've been in that situation. All single moms have. So forgive yourself for making some financial decisions that may not have been in your best interest, but we have all had to do it. But let's figure out a way to get out of that so that it won't happen in the future, or you can help mitigate or prevent it in the future. And then also cancel any unused subscriptions. If you've got multiple online streaming services or other things that you regularly subscribe to, check what your usage is or that of your children to see whether it's really worth making that monthly subscription fee. And then if you own a home, interest rates are so low right now, you might look at what the opportunity is to refinance the mortgage. The fifth money milestone is increasing cash flow. And when I showed the picture of all seven, I talked about this one as being multiple streams of income. This is an opportunity to look at ways to increase your cash flow. Now, here are some of the ways, create and stick to a budget. And I don't like to use that word budget. For me, the word budget is the equivalent of the word diet. I hate those words. So I come up with a spending and savings plan. Develop a written game plan, write it down or put it in your laptop or your phone, what your spending and savings plan is. And then if you can shave some of the costs off of your car and home insurance by increasing your deductible or maybe consolidating insurance policies, there are always ways to lower your premiums. And then reposition your savings. Maybe your savings are sitting in a low interest bearing account at your bank. And some of your money should be there, especially your emergency fund when you're starting out. That's the safest place for it. But when you grow money for your future financial goals, you're going to need to consider investing in things that are going to give you more opportunity for growth. And so that you might look at how much you have in your savings and whether you want to reposition some of that to a higher growth potential account. And then if any of you have private mortgage insurance and you're at a point when you can drop that on your home mortgage, that's totally a great cost to eliminate. The other side of that is adding to your cash flow rather than looking at reducing your expenses. Look at a side gig, or maybe start your own business, something you've always wanted to do. Or maybe you and your sister or your girlfriend or whatever. Look at starting a business. With people becoming better at technology, like I am, and everyone doing shopping online, the last several days, I have done, I'd say 90% of my Christmas shopping online for any budget, which was, I mean, just kind of amazing for me. I was always the traditional person who'd go to the mall and buy and look around and that kind of thing. But I'm getting better and better at online shopping. And so is the rest of the world. So starting a business that you might be able to launch online can be very low cost. Now, not to say that's the only type of business you can launch, but it's something definitely to consider. And then if you're employed, look at your W-2 allowances. Maybe you haven't claimed enough. That big tax refund you get when you file your taxes, that just means you've given the IRS that time to use your money. Look at the possibility of adjusting your W-2 allowances. The sixth milestone is building wealth. Now, there are some important things to consider with building wealth, but this is the fun milestone because this is where you get to dream about the future. Again, whether you're starting out or starting over or somewhere in between, this is where you grow wealth for those future goals that you have. A lot of people, especially women, are concerned about running out of money in retirement. This is a real concern for women because we live longer and we end up with less money because we've taken care of the kids, we've got less in Social Security, we've got less in our 401k plan. So women in particular need to be thinking about the money they're going to have in retirement. And things you do today can help set you up better for that future. There are 4 threats that every person in this milestone building wealth must conquer. The first one is procrastination. And ladies, we are great at this one, especially when it comes to planning and finances, because we are so busy with our job, so busy taking care of our kids, so busy taking care of our parents, so busy just surviving that we don't have time. We put it off. We think when this happens, then I'll get a chance to do that. We need to start planning today. The next one is we need to protect ourselves against losses. Then we need to consider inflation, and we definitely need to consider taxes. That's something I hate thinking about. I know all my girlfriends hate thinking about. So let's go into a little bit more detail about these 4 threats. Let's talk about the impact of inflation. Now, before I talk about that, I want to do a little bit of math with you. This is the only math I'm going to ask you all to bear with me. But the rule of 72 will give you an estimation of how many years it will take for your money to double. So say your money is earning 10%. 72 divided by 10 is 7.2. That means that every 7.2 years, your money will double. But say you're like most people and you have your money in the bank. Now, banks are paying something less than 1%. But to have clean, easy math, let's assume it's 1%. 72 divided by 1 is 72. So any money you have in your bank account earning 1% interest it will take 72 years for that money to double. Now, inflation is the tax of time. If you look at what the inflation rate is, traditionally, it's been 2.8% over the last 100 years. So keeping inflation in mind, inflation meaning the increase in the price of things each year, 2.8% every year. If you look at the rule of 72, that means the price of goods today will double in 25.7 years. So not only do you have to think about putting money aside today and helping it grow today, you need to think about how much money you're going to need in the future and what that money may cost. So the bottom line in all of this, what I'm trying to tell you is, you need to think about what the cost of things is going to be in the future. And so not only putting money aside today for future growth, don't keep all your money in the bank. You need to be making those doubles. You need to prepare yourself for higher costs in the future. So let's talk about the impact of losses. So say you've got a $10,000 investment and it loses 50%. Like many people did in their 401ks back in 2008 and 2009. And some people lost a lot in this year with the great volatility in the market. So say you lost 50%, and so your 10,000 is now $5,000. How much would you have to gain to get back to even? A lot of people will say 50%, but it's actually 100%. 50% of $5,000 is $7,500. So you need to get your money, the total would be $7,500. You need to earn 100% gain in order to get back to $10,000. And the last threat to growth of income is the impact of taxes. So keep in mind what the tax treatment is for the ways you're investing your money. I like to compare it to considering taxes on the seed or the harvest. If you pay taxes on the seed, you're paying taxes immediately, but all of the growth, all of the harvest will be tax-free. If you're paying taxes on the harvest, then you're not paying taxes on the seed, but you're paying taxes on all of that growth. Now, what kind of situation does that apply to in real life situations? Well, think about IRAs and 401ks. When you invest money in an IRA, or when you have your salary deduction for a 401k or 403b or 457, you actually aren't paying taxes on that IRA investment or that 401k contribution. But all of the growth in that account, IRA account or 401k account, it will continue to grow. And when you retire and start taking distributions or start taking advantage of the harvest, all of that money is taxable. Now, I highly recommend IRAs and 401ks because it's a great way to get in the habit of setting money aside. What I'm saying is be cognizant of the tax consequences, because there are several different investment vehicles that are taxed in different ways. Some are taxed now, some are taxed later, and some are taxed never. And you want to be aware of what the tax consequences are for whatever it is you're investing in. Oops. Okay. The seventh money milestone is to protect your wealth, creating a will and guarding your legacy. Now, neither Prince nor Aretha Franklin had an estate plan in place. These are wildly talented, successful icons, and neither one of them had a will or an estate plan in place. And unfortunately, most everyone else is just like these amazing icons and also don't have a will in place. Now, we may not have the wealth that Prince and Aretha Franklin have to do that kind of planning, but you're going to want to have an estate plan in place, especially if you've got young children, and especially if you want to protect your children and any assets you want to pass to them from the hands of an abusive partner. So there are 4 documents that every estate plan should include: a will that identifies the guardian of your minor or special needs child. And the will identify who's going to carry out your wishes and how you want your property distributed. The next document is the financial power of attorney. This identifies who will control your financial affairs, like paying your bills, your insurance, your taxes, if you're not able to do so yourself. The third document in most places is called a living will. In the state of Georgia, we call it an advance healthcare directive. And this identifies the person you want to make your healthcare decisions if you're not able to do that, and what kind of medical treatment you prefer to have. And then the fourth document is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act release, or a HIPAA release. And this permits the healthcare agent who you named in your living will to have access to your medical records and your insurance information so they can assist in your treatment. If you have those documents in place, if you have a good estate plan in place, you may or may not have, or your heirs may or may not have to go through the probate process. And probate is the process of having a court administer your estate in accordance with state law, as well as your identified wishes in your will. Another estate planning document that some people elect to have, it's certainly optional and not required, is a trust. There are all kinds of trusts out there. If you are the parent or grandparent of a special needs child, then you seriously need to consider putting a trust in place. Because if that special needs child is receiving government benefits and they receive an inheritance from you, that may bump them out of their government assistance. And having a special needs trust in place will prevent that from happening. A lot of people don't have an estate plan in place because they procrastinate, or they don't want to think about that happening, or they think it's too expensive or time consuming. There are online estate plans for all budgets. And again, if you've got minor children or a special needs child, or if you've got a situation where you want to keep death benefit proceeds or your estate proceeds out of the hands of an abusive partner, if you're still married to them and they still have legal rights, then having an estate plan in place can be critical to helping put those protections in place. Now, when I sit down with a client, a single mom, a survivor of domestic violence and financial abuse, or a married couple, I help them create a plan with this money discovery form. Now, this money discovery form is available in the back of the How Money Works book that was written by Tom Matthews and Steve Siebold. It's been out about a year and it's already sold 500,000 copies. Now, for those of you who are watching this live, who are part of our live audience, for the first 50 of you who provide your name and mailing address to Ashley, I will mail you a complimentary copy of this book. So again, it's the first 50 people in our live audience who send their name and mailing address to Ashley. I'll send you a complimentary copy of the book. For those of you who aren't in that group, you can find the book, How Money Works, Stop Being Suckered, on Amazon.com. One other note that I'll make is I'm in the process of writing the version of this book for women. Our plan is to launch on March 8th of next year, which is International Women's Day. And I hope all of you are on the lookout for that, because the book will contain information about victims and survivors of domestic violence and financial abuse. So that is my presentation about the 5 points to help empower survivors of domestic violence and financial abuse, and the 7 money milestones for a strong financial plan.
Wow, thank you so much, Kim. That was a lot of wonderful, wonderful, wonderful information. We've gotten a lot of questions that have come in.
Great.
So if you don't mind, we'll just pop right in and we'll try to get through as many as we can. We have about 9 minutes left. And if we don't get to any questions, would it be okay if I maybe sent you an email? We can include those in the follow-up email to all attendees.
Oh, absolutely, awesome. Ashley. I want to make sure everybody gets their question answered.
Okay, perfect. Well, let's start off with one that popped up early on. We're talking about life insurance. So the question is permanent insurance the same as whole insurance?
So whole life insurance is a type of permanent insurance. It gives you the ability to grow cash value. Some whole life insurance policies also include an option for a long-term care rider. So yes.
All right. Thank you. The second question is, what would you recommend for those who have accounts that are charged off and in our collection? So maybe, they're working with a survivor who has some accounts that are in collections process.
So right now, across most of the country, the courts are closed. Most lenders are open to negotiating. So if there's a way that you can kind of prioritize the debts and what's owed and try and negotiate with those lenders a payment plan or a reduction or maybe some kind of deferral, a lot of lenders are open to doing that, especially in these times. Now, if it's a situation where it's just a little overwhelming, you might want to seek the guidance of a bankruptcy professional who may be able to help advise you on whether bankruptcy makes sense for your particular situation. But the first thing you might want to do is try and negotiate with those lenders. I have seen a lot of horror stories on those companies that offer debt solutions. You pay them a fee and they help negotiate. Oftentimes, you're better off trying to do it on your own. So I recommend trying that first before you look at possibly bankruptcy or possibly working with one of those companies that will do it on your behalf for an extra fee.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This next question was pretty much answered. Someone had asked, do you recommend any online resources or books, which we just talked about, to learn more about finances, but any online resources, any place that people should go to check out and get more information?
So there are a lot of great resources out there. Start with my website. You can go to howmoneyworks.com/Kim Scouller, or you can go to wealthwave.com/Kim Scouller. Start with my How Money Works website. There's a lot of great information on there. And if you've got a particular question, you can always like me on Facebook and send me a DM. When you like me on Facebook or invite me to be a friend on Facebook, just remind me that you are one of the participants on this particular show.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Um, Next question is, where should we recommend that money be kept or spread out if we're not supposed to keep it all in the bank? So I think this question is maybe talking back, we were talking about maybe growing investments and things like that.
Right, right. So again, with the emergency fund, I usually recommend people keep that amount in a bank account. Now, for the other money for your future goals, talk to a financial professional or do some research online if you've got the time. There are a lot of great vehicles out there that will give you the option for growth based on your investment objectives, your time horizon, and your risk tolerance. Those are three areas that a financial professional or a company that is going to offer you something direct will get from you to understand what might be the best option for you.
Great, thank you. Next question is, how do you help a domestic violence victim who has newly came out of a domestic violence relationship with none of these milestones set up? So not only, they have no income to pay rent, food, now receiving assistance. So what do you suggest they work on first? Where do they start?
So the first thing I start with is the emergency fund. That's always where I start with a victim or survivor that I'm working with. If they have nothing to set aside yet, then I'm just being a sounding board for them and helping them look at what their career or job options are, what their housing situation might be, what their just kind of what their possible resources are for childcare, housing, career, and help just providing them advice on those three areas so they can get to the point where they are able to start an emergency fund.
That's great. Next question. What do you recommend? So if I have a judgment for $15,000 that was just entered against me 6 months ago, how do I pay for this without bankruptcy? Help. So this is someone's specific situation, it looks like.
So I have had clients in those situations, and we go to the judgment holder, the collector, the lender, and negotiate a deal. They are usually, because it's usually in the hands of a second or third party, it's not in the original lender's hand. And so the second or third party has typically bought that debt at a discount. Either way, they are typically open to negotiating with you. If you're coming, you're kind of transparent about your situation. In the time of COVID, they're getting help from the government, so they're a little bit more compassionate, or they're a little bit more flexible, shall we say. And typically they will, if you stick to the plan, at the end of the plan, whatever you all have agreed to do, they will have that judgment removed.
Great. And we have time for one more question. So last question is, I'm interested in information regarding my grandson who has special needs. I have a life insurance policy for him, but I want my son and daughter-in-law to manage his money, not his parents. Can you point me in the right direction to get the trust in place?
So you will need to find an attorney in your state who specializes in, it's usually elder care and estate planning. Attorneys who specialize in those areas typically can help you put a special needs trust in place.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Well, we've hit the 2 o'clock mark. I don't know how it flew by.
It went
Thank you
by
so
so
much
fast.
for all that information. It always does. It always does. But yeah, I appreciate the information. And I just want to kind of reiterate, I hope that everyone listening in today not only took away something that's going to help them or help their clients that they're helping with on a daily basis, but also help themselves in their daily lives, because everyone, everyone deals with money. It's something that we all need to have a good understanding of. And so I just think that this was such a good information, such a good foundation for people. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share that. And I'll go ahead and just wrap up by saying, or obviously give you a chance to say anything else you want to add, but I'll just say that we'll send out the slides, the video, certificate, all of that to everyone who attended today. And we'll send that out via email within the next week. So with that, Kim, anything you'd like to say to wrap up?
It has just been my pleasure and honor to be here. Thank you so much, Ashley, and thank you, domesticshelters.org, and all of you for the amazing work you do with victims and survivors.
Well, thank you. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Have a wonderful day and happy holidays. Bye-bye.